if Russia were to come in and try to buy 250 million, 500 million, $1 billion worth of silver, I think that would probably clean up any and all of available silver. So, whether they do that or not, to this point, Russia and China have pretty much let the U.S. go down the road to perdition on their own volition, rather than trying to push the U.S. off a cliff
Hmm.
because they don't want war.
How do you see the election affecting the world markets, the economy, and just things in general moving forward?
Well, I guess first and foremost, the U.S. will be laughed at less. Um, they're gonna. It looks like they're gonna go through and fire all the woke generals, so that's a plus. Uh, I think the biggest concern, really, well, first off, you know, I viewed this as uh, an election between who is gonna preside over the bankruptcy of this nation.
Hmm.
I mean, mathematically, this thing's going down, and in my mind, it was a question of whether we go down under the rule of law of the Constitution, or whether we go down under the rule of their law, which is a sliding scale. It changes depending upon the situation. So that's first and foremost. Uh, I think what is people are happy that the House, the Senate, and obviously Trump, it's all one party. The problem with that is there's not going to be any breaks whatsoever on spending. Whatever they want to spend money on, it's going to be like a rubber stamp. Boom, let's spend the money. So, we've got what, close to a $36 trillion deficit now. And I would imagine 4 years from now, that deficit or the debt will probably be 45 trillion or more. I mean, I would imagine they'll add another 9 or 10 trillion if markets allow that to happen. And I don't think that's the case. And I don't think that's the case because we're spending too much money on interest only. I mean, this year
Yeah,
was 1.1
the interest
trillion.
payments.
Next year is going to be 1.5, and within 2 years we'll be paying 2 trillion in interest only, while we're taking in what 4.7 trillion in tax revenue.
Hmm.
So I mean, we're going to be paying 40% of all tax revenues in just interest alone. That's not sustainable at all.
Is that why Trump may have created this new department, the Department of Government Efficiency, that's supposed to be headed up by Elon and Vivek? Are they getting ahead of this? Like,
Um, I don't know if they're getting ahead of this, but I mean, think about it. There is so much waste everywhere. You're talking about, $250 hammers and stuff like that.
mhm.
That's got to stop. But it doesn't matter if it stops because what's already in place is not sustainable. So they can
Yeah.
they can stop the craziness, but they can't fix what's already been done.
Mm. So it sounds like Trump's going to be the fall guy here, if that's the case, for the for a potential
Uh,
crash.
yeah, I mean, I don't think history will write that he's the fall guy because this took 50, 60 years. Uh, well, really, it's taken 111 years since the beginning of the Federal Reserve in 1913. It's taken many, many years to get to this point. So, in the immediacy, yeah, he's going to look like the fall guy, but I don't think history's going to write it that it's his fault.
Yeah. And what do you make of the reaction to his win? You look at the economy, the market's making new all-time highs as usual.
As far as markets are concerned, uh, I think obviously regulations are going to be relaxed. It's going to be easier to do business. There is some logic as to why the stock market's gone higher. Well, we've gone higher from nosebleed levels in the first
Yeah.
place. When all is said and done, I think all that's going to be wiped out. And as I've said all along, I think this is going to become a credit slash currency event that's going to topple pretty much the whole system. And the laws that have been put into place as described by the Great Taking, people are going to lose their assets through bail-ins.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like there's a complacency over the fact that Trump has won. And usually the people that who would be, I guess, most aware of the great taking have kind of leaned back a bit because, they've essentially got someone in who they perceive as who they see as someone who would be on the other side. Right. But it doesn't it appear that the great taking is going to happen regardless of who was president.
Yeah, it's math at this point. And
Mm,
just going back to what we were talking about before, the unsustainable of the unsustainability of the federal debt. The collapse is going to come. That is a mathematical fact. The question is how long.
mm.
And maybe participants are looking at it and saying, well, it would have been an immediate rug pull after Kamala got in, and now it's not going to be an immediate rug pull.
I see. And if Trump is able to implement his policies like he's laid out, the tariffs, the removal of the income tax, the Department of Government Efficiency kind of rating down useless spending, if all that stuff were to come into play and be successful, what does it look on the other side?
Uh, no matter what happens, we are going to have a
Mm,
system that looks far different than it does today. I mean, one of the good things I think Trump uh, is going to try to do is to bring Judy Shelton into the Federal Reserve, and
mm.
she is a hard money advocate. The problem is the system as it is. I mean, you can't. It's going in one direction. It's got to go straight. There can't be any turns,
Mm.
and because it's so fragile, it's so precarious at this point. Yeah, I mean, especially if Marco Rubio becomes chief of staff, or not chief of staff,
State,
secretary
Sec- Secretary of
of
State.
state. Uh, yeah, I mean, he's a war hawk. And I read a quote, and it was kind of humorous that no matter who you voted for, or no matter who we vote in, we always end up with John McCain. And John McCain, the ultimate war hawk, and that's again, it looks like that's what's just going to be a replay, but it'll
Yeah,
be more entertaining for sure.
yeah, yeah. It's not looking good. It's definitely not looking good in some regards.
Well, and what did they just do in the Senate? They just made
Soon.
John Thune
Yep.
the, the leader of the Senate. I mean, Rick Scott, that would have been a far better choice, and I would have had much more confidence. But John Thune is like a young version of McConnell.
Mm.
It's being led by a rhino.
Why is that important? Explain to the audience why that's important, especially for Trump
Well,
presidency.
it's important because uh, he has the power to stop a vote altogether. So if somebody comes up, let's say Rand Paul comes up with a program that has been
Mm.
well thought out
He can
and
gatekeep
is
it.
actually a good program, and John Thune doesn't like it, it's not even going to get voted on.
Yeah,
So they're able to steer. They can steer policy, or he can steer policy. And do you really want a rhino steering policy?
yeah, yeah. It's definitely a trade off. My personal opinion was that he had to make some deals to win this election. He made a lot of deals with a lot of elites like Peter Thiel, David Sachs, the PayPal
Adelson,
mafia guys, and now they're asking for a return on their capital. And
right, right.
this is it's give and take, I guess, in the world of politics.
Yeah, and just to be clear, because I'm sure there's people in your audience that believe in Jacera Nacera and trust the plan, and the white hats are going to come in. Forget about it. I mean, that's You're smoking crack if you believe that.
Yeah, yeah. If there ever was a psyop, I mean, it was that. I mean, there was even not to get too esoteric about this stuff, but there was even a program that had the same vernacular as that trust the plan back in Russia in the early Soviet days to weed
Right.
out dissidents.
Yeah, Q, in my view, Q and trust the plan was a way to, I don't want to
Pacify.
really use the word placate, but calm the conservatives. And, the conservatives to this point have been polite. They can say what they want about January 6th. That was not an insurrection. I mean, that was like an inside job. They were stirred up. They were stirred up by gas. Um, but to this point, conservatives have been polite and have been law-abiding citizens. And if you went back to 2017, 18, 19, that might not have been the case if Q wasn't there saying trust the plan.
Mm, interesting. Well, let's take it back to the world of precious metals for a bit. Breaks are still going to back their currency off of gold and silver. You've got central banks buying gold and silver. Is this really going to change anything in the long run?
No, not at all. Russia came out and said that they're going to buy other commodities other than gold, and the first one they listed is silver.
Yep.
And I will just say that silver is such a small market where Russia to try to come in and buy 200. If Russia were to come in and try to buy 250 million, 500 million, $1 billion worth of silver, I think that would probably clean up any and all of available silver. So, whether they do that or not, to this point, Russia and China have pretty much let the U.S. go down the road to perdition on their own volition, rather than trying to push the U.S. off a cliff
Mm.
because they don't want war. Now, if Russia steps up and breaks the silver market, yeah, those could be construed as fighting words, and you'd have a war. My guess is that Russia's probably, going to pick away with smallish trades, 25, $50 million, um, just to keep, just to turn the screws a little bit, but not enough to put it over the edge. The situation, the way it is right now, well, I think the last number I saw was there's 406 uh, paper gold ounces or silver ounces for every single silver ounce that exists.
Really?
I mean, how's that even possible? Yeah, if you look at the contracts, the LBMA contracts, the COMEX contracts, there's far, far more silver represented by paper than there is silver.